This is the Mainframe Connect podcast, brought to you by the Linux Foundation's Open Mainframe project. Sponsored by Phoenix Software International and by ComInfinity, a Converge company. Mainframe Connect includes the I Am a Mainframer series, the riveting Mainframe Voices series, and other content exploring relevant topics with mainframe professionals and offering insights into the industry and technology. Today's episode is another in the I Am a Mainframer series, exploring the career journeys of mainframe professionals.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the I'm a Mainframer podcast, brought to you by the Linux Foundation's Open Mainframe project. I'm your host, as always, Stephen Dickens, and we're joined today by Richelle from Beta Systems. Hey, Richelle, welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, but absolute pleasure. So let's just get started. Let's get the listeners and viewers orientated. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for Beta Systems.
Yeah, sure. So I call it my Asia to Austria career journey. So
I like it.
I started in the Philippines. That's where I'm from. So I was straight out of university. I was a programmer trainee. So I immediately was starting programming in COBOL, Kix, JCL. We were taught MVS. So that really laid a good foundation for my mainframe career. So I was a programmer for, it's an in-house programming for a local bank. But then I moved to more international bank, but I'm doing the same thing. So I'm more in the programming of software for international banks. And that's, I think, my first half of my career is that. So I'm a programmer, COBOL developer. And then that's when I moved to Europe. So it was IBM then, but now I think they're called Kyndryl. So that's when I moved to more system operation, systems programming space. So that's when I moved to a more different, like not just geographically, but in terms of work as well. And then I realized I wanted to move back to more development role. So now so at first I moved to a software vendor, CA, then became Broadcom, and now I'm working for Beta Systems. So that's when I became, aware of projects like Zowe. I became involved with Zowe and Open Mainframe. I even became Scrum Master for a bit for Zowe Explorer. So I was part of the team that developed Zowe Explorer. So I'm still very much part of that world. But yeah, so I think my role became sort of in that hybrid position between I was a pure mainframe developer, and then I started learning all of this TypeScript, JavaScript, Node.js, Python. So I became more of that. And then so in my current role at Beta Systems, what really attracted me to it is because I'm now part of that transformation, mainframe modernization transformation journey. So I'm now teaching not just apprentices. So we have an apprentice program that I'm teaching them how to program like in mainframe or their first touch with mainframe, but now it's via VS Code, via CLI. And it's not just these apprentices that I'm teaching. Now I'm even colleagues or older colleagues who are interested now in more of this modern stuff, or if they want to use it for like automation in their work. So that's where I'm helping out. So I'm really happy because for me, part of my passion about it is because I've been through so many different roles from Asia to Austria. I always think if I had these tools before, how would I have used it? So to me, that's how I share what I know, what I like about it. Yeah.
So, Richelle, there's a lot to unpack in that introduction.
Yeah, there's a lot of countries.
Multiple countries, multiple roles, multiple companies. So I'll take you back all the way to the beginning. Philippines, first job, working on the mainframe. Tell me about that transition. How did you get into the mainframe? We have a lot of people on this podcast and in the community in general who talk about that transition from sort of recent graduate to mainframer. Tell me a little bit about how you got exposed to the platform and what that first part of the journey looked like.
Yeah, sure. So in university, I think I had one COBOL course. Like it was just part of the list of programming courses that are available. So I'm fairly familiar with that. But the first touch with JCL, like ISPF and all of that, I think was jarring. But then because we had really great mentors. So to me, that's that's the role that those are my role models, because they were really patient with us. They know that it is very it's not how we are used to in the apps nowadays. So they're very patient with us, and so it was very step by step. So to me, my first real experience as a programmer trainee, again, because it's a trainee program, there's no real fear of maybe I'll make a mistake or something. There's a sandbox environment that we were in, and so I think that made it really it's smooth. The transition was really smooth. But yeah, so I think if I didn't have that, it would be, yeah, very scary.
Yeah, it would be scary. The other transition that I heard you say in your introduction was that you went from programmer to system programmer.
Yeah.
We don't see a lot of people make that transition. So maybe talk a little bit about what that involves. Trying to get you to sort of describe the role and some of the different characteristics, because there's a lot of people who listen to the show who are thinking about career transitions.
Right.
We get a lot of really interesting mainframers on the show. So maybe just talk a little bit about that and what your experience was going from the sort of core COBOL developer and JTL and Rex, then on.
Yeah, yeah. I think because if you're a COBOL developer, Kix developer, you interact with systems operations as in general. So you kind of know what you request them to do, but you don't actually know how they do what they're doing. And so the transition to me was more learning the process of, and also having the right access for everything was it became very clear to me, because previously, I'm a programmer, this is the project, give me access. And so just first knowing what you can and cannot do, and why the accesses are set up in this way, and then slowly getting to know. So I was working with Tivoli workload scheduler and more DB2 admin stuff. So it became very important, the criticality of the work, to be able to immediately assess problems as they come, and so on. So to me, that the transition was more about the focus, and the criticality was heightened. But I think because I'm already familiar with the tools, and I'm already familiar with the interfaces, it was easier.
So let's wind forward now. I think we've set a strong foundation. So let's wind forward now. What are you doing on Zowe? It sounds like from the introduction I got to you was, you've got to speak to this lady on the show. She's really huge in the Zowe community, doing a lot in this space. So that was what I was told of. So, and then you touched on some of the roles that you've taken in that Zowe community. We're kind of 5 years into Zowe now. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing, and also, if you can, position kind of where you think the Zowe community is, and where we are sort of 5 years into that journey.
I like how you focused on the word community, because I think to me that was really the main, like, it's a very important part to me of Zowe. So in my previous role, so we were building, I was part of the team building Zowe CLI, those commands and all of that, even before it became Zowe. And so then when it became Zowe, I was part of the Zowe Explorer team, first as a contributor. So we were doing TypeScript programming and building out the features, like to have parity with Zowe CLI. So the CLI commands that we built, we were putting that in Zowe Explorer. And suddenly, I don't know if it was suddenly, but I became part of the like quote unquote leadership as Scrum Master. And so I was doing the admin stuff behind that and managing our deliverables. So because of that role, I was part of these meetings, the planning, and all of that. So I really saw that roadmap, and I became really active in Slack as well, where the community is really thriving. So to me, I that was a really good experience, just talking to different people from different backgrounds. I mean, in Zowe, we have that hybrid, right, of people who have been in mainframes for 30, 40 years, and then you have these people from the distributed side who bring in different perspective on how this is how we use the CLI in our environment, and maybe we should change that to be more familiar, so that everybody can have the same access to mainframe resources, but in a way that we are familiar with. I think to me that's the beauty of the project, the community that comes together. We're learning from each other. It's not saying one is better than the other. When we combine all of those knowledge and experiences, I think that's when we create good solutions.
I think you hit on it there for me. I think when I look at the genesis, I was in the room when we announced Zowe at a share 5 years ago now. And I think we've captured magic in a bottle, because I think genuinely, as you say, the ability to bring together various different perspectives in the community. I don't think any one company would have been able to create Zowe. It really has been the product of a community effort. And yes, we've got some big contributors. Yes, we've got some big people who support the platform. But I think it's been that community effort. And I think the thing that gets missed, and I'm glad you touched on it, was that the community pulls in non-mainframers as well. Because I think if it was just a community of mainframers, we wouldn't have seen the success. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I think it's a different mindset, but it's needed, I think. But I think you also need that perspective. Okay, we cannot just go fast and break things because it is the mainframe, it's critical and essential. But so it has to be a balance of both, that we cannot just go ahead and implement this or pull in this open source stuff. But at the same time, you need that perspective that because it's a different mindset and we need both sides.
So it's interesting. You're probably a good person to ask this question. Where do you see Zowe going? Where do you see it going next? What can we look forward? Obviously, the community owns the roadmap, but where do you kind of see Zowe going next?
I think from my perspective, since I'm also in my current role, I'm in that in between space. So to me, that's my perspective. I think Zowe really shines in that we can use it in the mainframe context. We can pull mainframe info and then use it on my workspace and vice versa. So I think Zowe in that way is that bridge. We've always used Zowe as a bridge that that yeah that analogy there, but I really think it will shine because it's that hybrid mainframe transformation. It's happening, and that's what most of the organizations surveyed have said, that they're doing transformation and they're doing hybrid transformation. And I think Zowe that is where Zowe will shine.
So, are you involved in any other open source projects, maybe even outside of the Open Mainframe project? Are you committing code to anything else, or is it just your focus is in the mainframe space?
Yeah, Zowe is the main one, and this year I've also contributed to Zowe Explorer stuff.
Okay, fantastic. So, tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Beta Systems. They're not going to be a huge name. I know them, know some of the people there. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Beta Systems. Maybe take a sort of corporate view for a minute.
Yeah, sure. So we are a software vendor that we focus on. We have Automate Now, LogZ, DocZ. So those products that have also a hybrid approach. We have a lot of mainframe customers, but we also take care of non-mainframe customers. So we have that hybrid approach. And my role is to help in that journey for not just in the development space, but helping the developers like automate their stuff. I think my main project in the previous years was our installation. So we were enhancing that installation to be more aligned with ZSMF installation. So I'm working a lot with ZSMF, and also I advocate for Zowe use of Zowe within our systems when we're developing in our pipelines and all of that. So we use also Z Open Automation Utility in our pipelines, in our day-to-day tasks. So yeah, so to me that's very exciting because I'm still working with mainframes, but I'm working with these modern tools, and then I become sort of if they have problems with VS Code, because they know I was part of the Zowe Explorer project. So if they have problems, so they will come to me. So I really like that role, that I'm the in-between person between all of that.
So a couple of questions that I always ask of people, I'll go first here with one, and I'm really interested to get your perspective because I want to understand you've had a varied career, open source, working for vendors, working for end users, you've worked in different countries. What advice would you give to Richelle, age 21, coming out of college? You've got a few years now of experience. What would you give to advice to your younger self?
That's a good question. I think I would go with encouragement. I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm gonna say have faith. Trust that you would know the right time if you're going to stay or leave. You would know the right time when to stay or when to leave. I think. I
That's
think that
good
would,
advice, I think.
yeah.
That's good advice. It's interesting that so many people stay when they should have left, and they go when they should have stayed. It's a fascinating point. Maybe just sort of elaborate on that. I cut you off, maybe, but give me a little bit
Oh, no.
more on what that means.
I think I think you're right. I think I'm many people are averse to change, and I think and that applies not just to jobs or
Mhm.
countries, but technology as well. And so again, from that perspective of I'm in between, like I feel like just because one thing is working right now doesn't mean that you're not going to experiment and you're not going to try. I think try try something, and then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? I think that first real fear of I don't know this, I think to me that I don't like that. I'm naturally a very curious person, and so I'm curious about this change, right? So I'm also not very a risk. Um, I'm not a very risky type of person, but at the same time, my curiosity sometimes leads me. Hey, what about if I move to Europe? What about if I move a different country? And also, what about if I move from like systems operations to this open source stuff, or from COBOL developer to systems operation? So I
I,
think,
I think you're
yeah,
doing yourself a disservice. Some of those moves would be really risky for a lot of people. I think you're probably selling yourself short. So,
yeah.
final question, Richelle, and I ask it of everybody on the show, and I'm really fascinated to get your perspective. Where do you see the mainframe 3, 5 years out? You've got a crystal ball. You're able to look at the crystal ball, and the mist's clear. Where do you see the platform a few years from now?
I think this hybrid space where I am now, it will grow. I
Mhm.
think that's where I see it. I see that we are going to pull more people in from distributed environments, and then we're going to pull mainframers from pure siloed tools and processes to more open source distributed processes. And I also feel like the in a few years we would see more and more women in the space.
Mhm.
I really think so. I think
I hope
just
so too.
recently, yeah, recently in the conference we have a women IT track. I think we have there's we need more and more visibility, and I think that will happen because it's the onboarding process is easier now, right? So it's not about this big bulky machines. This is something now the mainframe is accessible to even to students, to people who are just starting their career. It's easier for them to start and it's not that big box anymore. And so we talked about the visibility of women in
Mhm.
mainframe, and our podcast, Mainframe Coven. This will be hosted under Mainframe Connect,
Mhm.
under Open Mainframe Project. And so that's our main vision. We want visibility of women's stories. So our tagline is like real stories from essential yet unseen minds behind the machine. So it's about the stories from women, not just from going from the past, like Ada Lovelace, Grace Hopper, but to the present, our current colleagues, and also going to the future, as we were talking about the future of um, mainframe. So we want to be able to see that women visibility will be there when we're talking about AI. We want to be able to see women in mainframe when we're discussing the next generation of Z. So our podcast, we have 10 episodes planned. The first one will happen in June. And yeah, our first episode will be about the term Kilo Girl, which is a very controversial title, but I think that's a very good first episode topic.
Yeah, we've had some fantastic women on the show over the years. I think it's really powerful for me to see the community rally around the women in this industry. I think we've got some fantastic leaders. I'm thinking of people like Deb Carbo, Nicole Fagan, both at Broadcom. I'm thinking about Tina Tarquinio and Meredith Stoll at IBM. Thinking about Rosalind Radcliffe. There's a whole bunch of female leaders in this industry. Priya Doti at BMC in a leadership role.
Even in Zowe.
Yeah, I'm missing thousands of women by just mentioning a few there off the top of my head. But it's fascinating to see the community rallying around, and absolutely check out that show. I think it's going to be fantastic. Under the Mainframe Connect, the Open Mainframe Connect podcast series, which obviously this is one of the shows. Fantastic. Looking forward to those. I'll be checking out those episodes. Richelle, thank you so much for joining us. Click and subscribe into this show. Click and subscribe into the new show that Richelle just mentioned, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mainframe Connect podcast and this episode in the I Am a Mainframer series, sponsored by Phoenix Software International and Vicom Infinity, a Converge company. Like what you heard? Subscribe to get every episode, or watch us online at openmainframeproject.org. Until next time, this is the Mainframe Connect podcast.